Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to look at identifying domain and range from a graph. And we're going to talk about some interval notation. All right, so here this is a set of all possible x values or input values. We've been using these words interchangeably. These are values which will output real numbers for y. When we talk about range, range are all the possible y values or output values that result when all possible x values have been input. Or we'll say put in, because that makes more sense. The relation. So again, domain are all the x's, range are all the y's. So this looks kind of overwhelming. Remember, we talk about domain and range in a variety of different ways, or we have been. All right, so when we talk about continuous data, we talk about solutions that are along a continuum. I'm trying here, guys. Along a continuum. I hope I spelled that right. Yes, I did. And includes values within a range or with a set, within a set. How about that? I don't want to use the word range because it's not necessarily that. So when I say a set, it's from like 1 to 6 or something like that. So that's like a set of data, everything in between. So when we talk about inequality notation, we talk about the fact that we have to define a variable. It's either going to be x or y. And then we describe it algebraically. That doesn't seem right. Algebraically in parentheses or in brackets. So for example, this right here is a graph of y equals x squared. If we're going to be looking at, let's start with the domain. I want you to go ahead and grab 2 colors because that's going to be coming in handy for you. So I'm going to pause the video. And I would like for you to also pause and find 2 colors, either highlighters, crayons, markers, something like that. So I'm going to actually start with this color here. So domain is our x value. So we're talking about the values from here to here, okay? So if you notice, there are arrows at the end of this. This is called a parabola. At the end of this graph, in order to create inequality notation, we have to start setting it up with a variable inside some brackets. So we're going to draw our brackets, throw an x in here to show that that's the domain. And if you can see here, because of the arrows, that means this continues in both directions, left and right, which means it goes from infinity to negative infinity or vice versa. But we always start with the least value. So this will be negative infinity to infinity. But in between, we're going to throw that x to show, okay, well, that's the variable we're using. And then it's going to include everything in between negative infinity to positive infinity. This is tricky, guys. Notice I used the less than symbol to show that it's everything in between negative infinity to infinity. And whenever we use the infinity symbol, there is no equal sign. So now let's look at the range. The range is going to be a little bit different. Our range is going to go this direction. So if you notice, there's essentially a stopping point, which is right here for our range. But it is going to go in the direction, that direction, or go up from there. So when we go to write our range, We defined our variable. The least value is going to be that x-axis, which happens to be 0. So that means we're going to go from 0 all the way, and it includes 0. That means the graph does touch the 0, all the way up to infinity. That's actually one way we can write this, or we can say that y is greater than or equal to 0. Either one of these will work. Means the same thing. So in this case, things will be interchangeable. Again, I know it's tricky. I would like for you to sketch this graph if possible. Don't worry about the grid lines. Really just draw the shape of the graph so that you have it as a reference. Here's another one. Too far. A very similar situation. If we're going to be talking about our domain, I'm going to start with a bracket. That's not very good drawing there. We have x. We're defining that variable as x. Now remember, our x values run this direction, and if you notice, there are arrows that take it in that direction, so it's going to go from negative infinity to infinity again. Which means it's going to be all real numbers. So all real numbers for our domain. Now the range is a little different. So our range is going to run up and down this time. Now, of course, there is a stopping point for our range, which is right here. So when I go to write it, we start with a bracket. We have y as our variable. Y goes all the way to 2, okay? Negative 2. So we're starting at negative 2. So that means all of our y values are greater than or equal to negative 2. We don't have to worry about the infinity. If you do want to do the infinity, it would be from negative 2. Y is greater than or equal to negative 2, all the way up to positive infinity. Either way means the same thing. One, I want you to sketch the graph. Don't worry about the dashed lines. So I'm going to start with the domain. Again, domain runs left to right. If you notice, though, this time there are dots at the end. There are not arrows. So this time it is going to have a starting and stopping point. So in this case, the x stops here and here. So the least value we have for the x is negative 2, and the greatest looks like it's a 2. But if you notice, it's an open circle. So that's going to change our inequality symbol. So I'm going to start by defining my variable within a bracket. The least value is a negative 2. The greatest value is a 2 with x in the middle. Now we have to look at our symbols. Remember, everything in between negative 2 and 2 is a part of that domain. So negative 2 is a solid circle, so that would be x needs to be greater than or equal to negative 2. But it's going to go all the way up to 2, but not include 2. So in this case, we're going to use an not equal to sign. So it would just be less than. And then, of course, we close it with a bracket. Now let's look at the range. Remember, range is up and down. Now this range actually stops and starts. So in this case, our range only goes from this point to whatever this is here. So that's the distance for our range. Let's go ahead and set it up with a bracket. So our least value for our range is all the way down here at negative 2, and the greatest looks like it's about 1.5. Of course, should be numbered for you better, but negative 2 being the least value, 1.5 being the greatest. Y goes in the middle. Again, we have a closed circle at the negative 2, so that is going to be a less than or equal to. Uh-oh. And then the 1.5 has a open circle, so then that's just less than. And there's our bracket. The good thing is you guys will never have to actually write your domain and range. You'll have to be able to recognize your domain and range. So it's about matching the graph, looking at the open and closed circles, the squiggly lines, and all of that. So I want you to give these a shot, and we will try them in class. So write your domain and range, and let's say that this one is A, B, and C, and we'll do some matching here. So pause it, write these down, and then decide if it matches with A, B, or C, and then we'll talk about it in class tomorrow.